Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So there's a bit of a shakeup with the United States Foreign Affairs Committee because news broke out that one of the members of the squad, Ilhan Omar, was ousted by the House GOP. Now, before we get into jumping into conclusions, I'm going to show you the response that the rest of the squad members in the Democratic Party gave in response to this. But then I'm also going to show you why their response is complete lunacy. Because there was more to the story that people didn't realize or they're not telling you, and exactly why they ousted her from the Foreign Affairs Committee. So, the news broke here. This is Fox News pointed this out, saying Ilhan Omar gets the boot. House votes her off Foreign Affairs Committee as Democrats cite racism. Omar claimed she was being targeted by Republicans for being an immigrant from a Somali immigrant who's Muslim. So, their go-to response is to use a basically identity trope as the excuse of why they did this. They think they automatically assume that because she happens to be a woman of color, she happens to be a Somali immigrant, she happens to be of Muslim faith, that is the automatic reason. And sure, there's a lot of people that have criticized her faith. There's a lot of people that have criticized her looks and stuff like that. But is that the actual case of this? Because we know about Ilhan Omar. We know about, the rest of the establishment and the Foreign Affairs Committee. And Ilhan Omar, even though she's part of the Democratic squad, even though she's part of the Democratic Party and she plays in favor with the establishment, she has had her moments of being vocal, being against the wars of the establishment. And it was one of the things I actually admired the most about her, was she was able to speak out on certain things. And unfortunately, when you're part of the establishment, and this is where, AOC and Bernie and everybody else kind of just fled the coop and lost their way to, basically panhandling with the establishment to kiss up to them so they can get a cushy job and cushy committees. I don't know what the hell I was saying there. It didn't really help the case of actually what they were campaigning for, and it showed what frauds they were, and it showed how the progressive movement being in the Democratic Party was always going to lead to a graveyard, because as soon as you get into the establishment party and you get cozy up with them, they're going to find 9 ways a Sunday to take you down. They're going to find 9 ways a Sunday to make you one of them, one of the establishment, and that's what AOC and Bernie and the rest of the squad members have become. So they go down this road, and AOC made a statement about this in chambers, in Congress here, and of course they're going down this trope of assuming that, oh well, she's a woman of color, she's Muslim, that must be the case. And while it seems like a very bold statement what you're about to hear from AOC, again, wait till you understand why exactly Ilhan Omar got kicked off, and why, as soon as you know that, why a speech like this is more hysterical than gutsy. And it was actually so hysterical that I did a TikTok about it. But that's not the point. Anyway, let's hear what AOC had to say.
Woman from New York, Representative Ocasio-Cortez.
All right,
The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Now, as a fellow New Yorker, I think one of the things that we should talk about here is also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America. And this is an...
Now, to be fair, I'll give her this defense. That is a good point that she's making. That after 9/11, there was fear-mongering, there was, Islamophobia, there was xenophobia that was going around still to this day. And I'll admit that I give credit to making that point. But watch how she turns into making this more of a priority about her. And how Ilhan Omar getting ousted by the Foreign Affairs Committee, she loses that point. She loses the point of why she got kicked off and tries to steer it away to more identity politics and more basically narcissistic behavior, because she's trying to make this about herself also and including herself into this situation, which I don't know why. But here's what she said.
Extension of that legacy. Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body. I had a member of the Republican caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. Don't tell me this is about consistency. Don't tell me that this is about a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks, when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes, and also...
So do you see how quickly it turned from Ilhan Omar getting ousted, and then, first of all, she didn't even talk about her, really. She mentioned about how after post 9/11, there's a lot of, hatred towards Muslims and stuff like that, which I'll give a slight credit to that. I'll give slight credit to that because that did happen, and we kind of still live in that fear. We kind of still live in that paranoid propaganda thanks to the war machine and the constant fear mongering and the constant manipulation and how that, the segregation, dividing of individual, it's just chaotic as is. I'll give her credit to that. But how she quickly steered the conversation into, well, a Republican member of Congress threatened me, and I happen to be a woman of color, so I'm making this a bigger deal than it is. And I'm not really pointing out the fact of Ilhan Omar getting ousted by the Foreign Affairs Committee for the actual real reason. I didn't do an investigation. I didn't call to order. I didn't do a press conference. But I'm going to make this big, giant, grand gesture. The political actress that I am, AOC, I'm going to make this big, grand gesture of how I got singled out. I'm a victim as much as Ilhan Omar. I don't even mention Ilhan Omar by name, but I'm just as much of a victim as she is. That's why this is painful. That's why this is hysterical. That's why this is a performance. Because nowhere did she ever mention how she got ousted, why she got ousted, even mentioning the situation. But the minute they mention about identity politics, she has to include herself in because she has to be the priority. It kind of just seems like narcissistic behavior. You would expect Trump to do something like this, but it's coming from AOC.
Elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you.
I like how she threw down the book down like, yeah, I did damn good, and I got threatened, and no one apologized for me. Yeah. Take that, GOP. Take that. Again, AOC, I admired her when she was campaigning. Then she became into Congress. Then she just became an establishment fraud. She became the hack job that she is. She's part of the fraud squad. They were completely useless to the whole thing, and we ousted them. We figured it out. That was a whole big sham to have the Justice Democrats be part of this, and how it was just complete nonsense. And still, she is the most favorable political actress because she can grandstand, she can do these great, amazing speeches and performative arts, and she does those live streams and tweets, and oh my God, she can be so chaotic, but not for the right reasons. And like I said, there's more to this that's not being addressed. And it's kind of the bigger picture that AOC has completely ignored. And why that's why this is so hilarious. Because she has not figured out exactly why Ilhan Omar got ousted. And actually, it was Max Blumenthal who pointed this out. journalist of the Gray Zone and does a lot of fantastic work. Max Blumenthal reminds us that Ilhan Omar wasn't stripped from the committee because she was a woman of color. The GOP ran a Somali woman against her. I'm surprised AOC didn't mention that. I'm surprised no one mentioned that. That, hey, by the way, they ran a woman of color against a woman of color. That was the GOP's, mind trick to try to play with the voters. Hey, I guess people like Somali refugees, so we'll just get our own and just make sure they play onto our side as much as they play the Democratic side. Again, this is why I hate political cults. This is why I hate political friggin' cults. They think that they can just trap people using these kind of mind tricks and identity things. Like, same with the whole George Santos thing. They think that, because he's a gay man from New York and so on and so forth, that everyone's just going to adore him. And then you realize he's a pathological liar. But that's not the point here. She was targeted. So Max Blumenthal says she was targeted for the same reason Corbyn was in the UK. The Israel lobby Benjamins. No mention of this or Palestine by AOC in the squad. That's the big thing out of all this. And that's one of the things I admired about someone like Ilhan Omar. Is because she called out the Israeli lobby. She called it out. She called the AIPAC lobby a terrorist group. She called them out by saying how disgusting and disturbing, how they're treating Palestinians, how they're slaughtering these people, how there's a genocide, how we're aiding money towards them, and the Israeli lobby is full far inside American politics. How this foreign country has so much rallying money and military assets that they're able to capture the United States government to allow a genocide of Palestinians to happen. That's why she got ousted. That's why she got ousted. Not because she's a woman of color, not because of being a Muslim faith. None of that matters. It's because she called out one of the biggest lobby groups, one of the biggest militarized lobby groups on planet Earth. She called them out, and that's why. Because if you know a little thing or two about foreign affairs and the United States, you know that the Israeli lobby are a very powerful bunch. Very, very, very powerful bunch. And they have organizations within the AIPAC lobby. And that's why you see candidates going to an AIPAC event, and they do these speeches, and they call people anti-Semitic by saying that Palestinians should be treated like human beings too. Because the Israeli lobby pays these politicians, pays these organizations, pays these companies to be a part of it. And we see this all the time. We see this all the time with all different people of all different backgrounds. Why do you think people got kicked out when they, wanted to boycott BDS? Boycott, desanction, and I just screwed it up. You know what I mean? Just how crazy that is. And she got kicked out of this committee because of that. So let's just remind people, this is who ran against Ilhan Omar. So, identity has nothing to do with it. Identity has nothing to do with it. Are there people that are criticizing her background in Muslim faith? Absolutely. But that's not the reason why she got kicked off the Foreign Affairs Committee. The Foreign Affairs Committee is exactly what the New York Post is saying. House votes to kick Representative Ilhan Omar off committee over anti-Semitic remarks. That's how powerful this foreign lobby really is. And they've done it to everybody, including Bernie Sanders, who's a Jewish man himself. A Jewish man himself got ousted by people saying he's anti-Semitic because he's not supporting the Israeli death cult machine. That's how powerful this lobby group really is. And that's why someone like Ilhan Omar got kicked off. Not a mention of that in AOC's speech. Not a mention. Not a word about Palestinians. Not a word about the foreign affairs ties with AIPAC. None of that matters. Because AOC cannot care less. AOC cares more about the identity because it's safer to play in that box and call someone a racist than it is to call one of the biggest military lobbies out for their death machine. And that's why it's hysterical. That's why it's a performance. That's why I mocked her in a TikTok video by saying she's a performance artist. Because that speech was empty. It didn't mean anything. There was no meaning behind it. And she made it about herself. She turned the conversation about her colleague getting kicked off the committee to something about herself. Oh, I got threatened by a Republican. So now I gotta make this about myself. I feel as victimized as her. That's why it's so laughable. And she doubles down on it. She continues to double down on it. So here's Citizen Free Press. And AOC went on to CNN. AOC went on to interview with Anderson Cooper, but that's not Anderson Cooper. I guess that's his right-hand man. I'm not totally sure who that is. But she goes on to Anderson Cooper 360 to talk about her big performance speech and how she's defending Ilhan Omar against racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia and all this other stuff, thinking that she's doing a victory lap. But really, how crazy and loony does she sound in this interview, knowing that this has nothing to do with the party itself or the fact that it's GOP, it's a GOP house. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact the establishment is bought by a death cult machine in another country. That Ilhan Omar had the courage and stance to actually call out. Just like how Mark Lamont Hill got kicked off of CNN because he called out the Israeli lobby and saying that why shouldn't Palestinians be treated like human beings? He got ousted by that network, kicked off the air, and had to get away from broadcasting. Now he's hosting, I think he's doing that show BNC or Black News Network. I don't know exactly. But anyway, so take a listen to this.
We're in alignment on.
Did you feel safe sitting there with him?
I think it's uncomfortable serving with people who engage in what many experts deem stochastic terrorism, which is the incitement of violence in a which is an incitement of violence using digital means and large platforms so that individual themselves.
So, I don't know if you just heard that right. She's calling her colleagues, she's calling people in the White House a form of terrorist. She's calling them a form of terrorist because they're using digital means to incite violence. Let me play that again because that sounds a wild accusation that she just made there.
I think both of us were in alignment on.
Did you feel safe sitting there with him?
I think it's uncomfortable serving with people who engage in what many experts deem stochastic terrorism, which is the incitement.
Stochastic terrorism? She's calling people that are in the White House working side by side with her stochastic terrorists? That they're inciting violence somehow by kicking off Ilhan Omar of the Foreign Affairs Committee because they're bought by a lot. Again, why? So only Republicans in the White House are deemed terrorists. But yet, no one has called out the Israeli lobby who literally funds actual terrorist groups to go and slaughter Palestinians. No one's calling that out. Nobody's calling that a terrorist group. AOC is not even bothering to do it. but another person in a suit and tie, because they're part of a different party than her, is deemed a terrorist. That is such an insane accusation. And again, she's trying to pivot this away from the actual origin of the story, and the actual reason why she wanted to get on stage was to help her friend Ilhan Omar. How is this helping her? How is this making her case that you're now putting yourself as a victim and then making a wild accusation that people of the Republican Party are terrorists? How is this helping your case? How is this helping the situation? Meanwhile, there's actual real-life terrorists out there that are killing innocent people, that you are part of that party that also funds it. Let me hear that again, because that was insane.
I think both of us were in alignment on.
Did you feel safe sitting there with him?
I think it's uncomfortable serving with people who engage in what many experts deem stochastic terrorism, which is the incitement of violence in an incitement of violence using digital means and large platforms, so that individual themselves may not be the one that's wielding a weapon. But I have had to ride, as has Representative Omar, consistently had to ride.
So, by her definition, her definition of stochastic terrorists, or whatever, however you pronounce it, basically, it's not a person that's actually doing the terrorist act, but somehow you're inciting another person that's going to tell another person that's going to do a terrorist attack. Like, I don't even understand this. I don't even understand this. I don't think she even understands that, because she can't even have a clear definition on this. Someone that isn't exactly inciting a violent act, but somehow is implying a violent act on someone. Like, I don't even understand this. But you're just flat out saying this on CNN, saying, well, those guys are terrorists. Those guys are a former terrorist that I don't even know exactly how to explain. Meanwhile, we send billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars off to terrorist groups, including Ukraine, by the way, which she fully supports. She is sending billions of dollars, your tax dollars, to an actual neo-Nazi clan in Ukraine. She's not calling that out. She's not calling that out. She's not calling the Israeli lobby out. She is not calling for what is actually happening. Which is this is just another classic AOC cowardly trope of hers. By playing the fact that, I'm being the revenge person, I'm going after you, I'm going to make this grandstand gesture, I'm going to be the gutsy woman, but then realize that this is not gutsy whatsoever. This is not courageous, this is not heroic. This does not help Ilhan Omar in any way. All this does is make her seem like more of a victim. Which is kind of shameful if you really think about it. It's shameful that you would do that to your own squad member. Just saying. You do that to your fellow colleague of the squad. That you're going to victimize yourself and you're going to go on these media appearances and say, these people are terrorists because, they did something to my friend. But for me personally, I've been violently attacked on Twitter. People have been criticizing me, telling me I need to bring the ruckus, something I campaigned for, but now I got a cushy job, so I'm not going to do that.
In 20,000-pound armored vehicles, engaging in some of the most gruesome threats that you can imagine that were incited by Republican members. This is not just about a tweet. It is about what life looks like and the marshaling of hundreds, thousands, if not millions of people into doing something. And Donald Trump knows that very well.
And what are you doing? What are you doing to stop this rise of terrorist acts, this rise of xenophobia, this rise of hatred? Are you doing anything to do anything like this? No. I don't think you are. I think you're actually one of the ones that helped vote to increase the military budget so we can continue on this war of terror. You and the other squad members have completely failed on being anti-war. Completely failed. You had to be called out in a town hall by a spectator who said Tulsi Gabbard has done more to be anti-war than you have ever done and you will ever do because you're part of the Democratic Party. You're an insider now. You have that cushy job. You have a cushy position. You're not going to challenge the party. You're not going to rock the boat. Why would you rock the boat if you're already comfortable in it? Because that is what AOC is now, and that is exactly what she's doing. She's not calling out for why Ilhan Omar got ousted by the Foreign Affairs Committee because an Israeli lobby group pretty much has bought foreign affairs of America. She's not calling that out, but she'll call out other people of Congress, other senators, as long as they're on the other team. She will say that they're terrorists. She'll say they're inciting violence through social media. Not exactly direct violence. Like, I didn't actually feel threatened, but they're implying things that might resort to maybe violent attack, and I don't know exactly how to say it, but I need to feel victimized. Which does not help the case at all. None of this helps the case. None of it. And none of it is showing people exactly how bought and screwed up this military-industrial complex really is. How deep, dark, and bought out their country really is when it comes to the military-industrial complex, when it comes to military contractors, when it comes to powerful, money-hungering, bloodthirsty, powerful foreign lobby groups like the Israeli lobby, like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, none of which ever get called out. But they're the most gruesome, evil, nefarious people, and they have done serious acts of violence towards innocent people in which AOC will never call out because they help fund her. They help fund the party. They help fund her establishment group so that she's able to have this position of power. And like the Superman movie says, with great power comes great responsibility. Unfortunately, she lost all responsibility. She just now victimizes herself and trying to play herself as some sort of heroic person. Like I said, AOC is the greatest political actress in this decade so far.